Hi again guys, and welcome to another installment of Rivals on Gran Turismo, and this particular match is another revisiting of the race car world, and again it's a requested rivalry. Not necessarily for these specific four cars only, but these are the four cars that we've narrowed it down to because although technically there are multiple versions of some of these vehicles, most notably the Audi R8 and the Nissan GTR, I've picked in particular the primary version of each of those cars. For the Audi, we've gone for the Team Phoenix vehicle, and for Nissan, the Team RJN YouTube liveried GT3 R35. And as if it wasn't obvious enough, this is of course a rivals match between the four GT3 cars of Gran Turismo 6, the four primary models: the Audi R8, the Nissan GTR, the Mercedes SLS, and the BMW Z4. All four are very powerful, very fast cars, and obviously they have different levels of performance, different levels of handling, and potentially different levels of value. So, as always, we'll take them all around a track first of all, and then see which one wins, at least on paper. First of all then we have the Audi R8, and of the four vehicles I would say this is the car with probably the least beginner friendly handling. It takes a little bit more finesse and a bit more time in tuning the car to get more out of it. It's a vehicle which is a bit more tail happy, a bit more skittish than the others here. It's the only car of the four to be mid-engined. The other three are all front engine rear wheel drive. And although it is definitely not a slow car, in fact in a straight line it can give any of these a fantastic run for their money, it's around corners where the R8 can sometimes have some trouble. Now, it's not a bad car around corners. If you actually master it, it can be extremely quick. And of these four vehicles, it was the second fastest around Spa, at least with me driving. So in terms of ability, it certainly has the potential there. It's very powerful. In fact, all four cars are. They have almost 1,000 horsepower apiece. It's got a lot of torque. It's got the second largest engine of the group, and with a price tag of 400 grand, even though it is one of the more expensive of the four, that's still not expensive for a vehicle of that kind of performance. This is easily as good as, say, a 1 million or 1.5 million credit LM race car style vehicle, and it can beat a lot of those cars. Overall then, I would recommend the R8, at least in this form in particular, for people who want a bit more of a challenge. It's not for less experienced drivers, but if you want to jump in at the deep end, then you could certainly try it. What then about the Mercedes? Well, of the four vehicles here, I would say that the Mercedes is probably my favourite. The SLS GT3 is a vehicle which, as well as a couple of the others here, such as the Z4 as well, I have extolled the virtues of before on the channel, in top 10 lists for value, in dedicated review videos, that kind of thing. It's just a really good car, in a similar way to the others here. That being said, it is better than some, and it's not as good as some. The Mercedes is not as quick as the Z4, or, interestingly, the Audi, with me driving again. I expected it to be maybe even the quickest of the four around this track, but it wasn't. I was surprised that it wasn't, because in a straight line it is a monster, and it's actually the most powerful car of the four. And although the SLS wasn't quite as quick, at least on this occasion, and doubtless it would be different for different drivers, it's still a car which is extremely quick. And the problem with saying that one car is slower than another is that that automatically makes people think that the other car must be really no good at all, or that's an easy mindset to fall into. You want the best and don't care about the rest. That's not the case. You should definitely consider all four of these cars for different things, and if you take them on a different track, you will get entirely different results. If you take all four vehicles, for instance, around a track which requires absolute top speed, like Route 7, Route X, the Le Mans without the chicanes, then the Mercedes will have the advantage because it is the fastest of the four for sheer straight line performance. So it has its upsides and downsides. What though about the Nissan? The GTR is, funnily enough, one of those vehicles which I actually prefer the road version of over the race car, because the road-going GTR is a fantastic performance car in every way. Straight line performance, driftability, handling, value, it's got everything you need from a performance car. The race car, on the other hand, at least for me personally, is ironically not that great around corners. It's only 1350 kilos, which is the same as the Mercedes, but it feels like more, at least for me. I could easily imagine this being a 15 or even 1600 kilo vehicle, and in my experience, I personally find the GTR to have similar handling to the Tajima E-Runner, which isn't that great considering that this is a rear-wheel drive car that is far lighter than that vehicle is. Plus, all of the racing GTRs in this spec, be it the Team RJN, the base model, the Team Shoals, whatever, they all have a very significant problem when it comes to top-end performance, and that is once you get above, say, 130, 140 miles per hour, even with full downforce, in fully powered form, or at least close to it, they have extreme understeer, so much so that you can actually totally lose control. The front end tries to lift off the ground and you actually can't steer the car at all. If you take this car on, for instance, Route X and try to get a top speed out of it, you can get it up around 260, but it doesn't turn at all. And the only way to get it to turn at high speed is to significantly change the tune and reduce that speed by around 20 miles per hour. Now 240 isn't slow, but it means that it's far from being as quick as the others here without totally sacrificing high-end handling. So it's an interesting predicament of a car. Some people like it, I personally don't, and it was the slowest of the four with me driving. And that brings us finally to the BMW. Now straight off the bat, the Z4 GT3 is a car which I expected to be among the fastest, and it is. In fact, it's the fastest of the four cars, at least with me driving, with my tuning, on this particular track. Now on a different track, of course the results would be different, with different tuning they could, and certainly with a different driver. But for me personally, the Z4 is an amazing race car, and although I do still prefer the Mercedes overall, the Z4 is a very difficult package to beat. The value is fantastic at 350,000 credits, just like the Nissan, but unlike the Nissan, this car is extremely nimble through corners and doesn't sacrifice its handling to get those kind of high speeds. The fact is, this car can do over 260 miles per hour, and the fact that it has over 960 horsepower means that the acceleration is also incredible. But all four cars are extremely fast, which means that although the Beamer was the quickest around the track, how do they compare in terms of numbers? Well, as you lay out the specs of all four vehicles on paper, you start to see that this is one of those matches which is very, very heated between all four cars, and they share many similarities. There are, of course, winners in different ways, but the point is, they're all very close in terms of value for money. They are all amazingly well priced. A cool million credits cheaper easily than many of the traditional LM cars on Gran Turismo. And then of course you have the power. All four cars have well over 900 horsepower, and a couple of them are close to 1,000. In terms of torque, they're all well up there as well. The weight though is where they start to differ. Although they are all technically GT3 spec vehicles, the weight varies quite a lot. Well over 100 kilos, in fact, separating a couple of the cars at least. So, the question is, which one wins on paper? Well, first of all, we have that price, and two cars cost 350,000 credits apiece, those being the BMW and the Nissan. So, of course, they both get a point there. In terms of sheer engine size, it goes to the Mercedes, which shares a 6.2 litre, just like the road car. Then, of course, it's the Audi with its 5.2 litre V10. But overall, the point does go to the Mercedes there. As far as PP level as well, it actually also goes to the Mercedes, being the only car of the four to just edge its level over 690. But all four cars are over 680, which is of course extremely high. All four vehicles are literally LMP car rivaling. Next up then we have the power, and again the Mercedes actually also gets the point there with 989 horsepower, which is a little bit more than the Nissan and a fair bit more than the Beamer and the Audi. In terms of torque though, it's not the Mercedes. The Mercedes does have the second highest, but taking the win there is the Nissan with a huge 836 foot-pounds, which interestingly comes from the car with the smallest engine. Because, of course, turbo technology on the GTR models has always been fantastic, and that lends itself toward having more torque. Next up though we have the weight, and as I said, it kind of changes around a bit more. Some of the other Audi models have different amounts of power and different amounts of torque, and although we went for the Team Phoenix version, there are certainly other viable options, albeit ones which have bad graphics and cost a lot more, such as the Team PlayStation LMS cars. In terms of weight though, the BMW, of course, wins. 1190 kilos is 60 kilos less than the Audi, 160 kilos less than both the Mercedes and the Nissan. And that's a significant advantage to have. That's almost the full range of ballast that you can get on the BMW, and it's still basically lighter than most of the other cars here, even with that kind of ballast. So, of course, the Beamer gets the point. And as far as horsepower per tonne as well, although the BMW is not the most powerful, it's actually third, the fact that it does weigh so much less gives it a pretty easy win. All three of the other vehicles have well under 800 horsepower per tonne compared to the 809 on the Z4. And although, as always, the lap times do not get a point because there are just too many variables at play, it is interesting to note that the first fastest, at least for me, was the BMW, then in second was the Audi, in third was the Mercedes, and finally in fourth was the Nissan. So overall, which one wins? Well, coming in third is the Audi R8, interestingly, with 0 points. It's great in a lot of ways, but not good enough to win. Then, coming in second is the GTR, probably to the surprise and disappointment of some people given how strong GTRs are on Gran Turismo. But then, coming in joint first place with 3 points apiece are both the BMW Z4 and the Mercedes SLS. The BMW, of course, has price, weight, and horsepower per tonne, whereas the Mercedes has engine size, PP level, and sheer power. So a very interesting match overall, and although the cars are better than each other in some ways for sure, and closer in some as well, they are all very viable rivals to each other, and as I said, in different scenarios, different cars do win. As a general rule, I would say that the SLS is great for tracks which are more open and which allow for more top-end performance. The Audi is great for people who want a bit more of a challenge, and for tracks which require more of a high-speed flow, such as the Nürburgring Ring. The BMW Z4 is a great all-rounder, straight line performance, handling, it's pretty much everything, the whole package, especially for the price. And the Nissan, maybe it's just me, but the Nissan kind of is a disappointment to me. Yet again, that's another reason why I said that I prefer the road-going version over the race car, because the road cars are fantastic. The race car, though, not so much. It's very big, it's very bulky, it feels heavier than it actually is, and although the straight-line performance has potential, it doesn't really manage to deliver on it because of sacrificing its handling. But I'm sure there are different results for other people, and that's it overall for this particular Rivals match. So I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.